Traffic and Parking Advisory Board meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendation today will in fact go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you do not agree with the decision made here today, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may in fact sponsor a new ordinance regarding that same item. All items do require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, August 23rd at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to speak on that item at that time, though the council will in fact take no action. On Tuesday, September 13th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You again will be allowed to speak to the item at that point in time. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please approach the podium, give both your name and address for the record. I do ask that you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to this board for discussion and ultimately action. Please call the roll to ensure a quorum.
Krasinski,
Here.
Hanson,
Here.
Hartman,
Here.
Becker.
Here. First item on the agenda is public comment. Now, this is actually for items that are not on the agenda. And I see 2 gentlemen sitting here, and I believe I know what they're here to speak about. So we will dispense with public comment and move right to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the pledge. The flag is behind everyone except for me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Which then brings us to the first business item of the agenda, which is approval of prior minutes.
Move it.
Second.
Anyone with any additions, deletions, or comments? Seeing none, I will call roll on approval of minutes.
Krasinski,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. Which then brings us to old business. Mr. Collins.
I don't think we have any old business.
Okay. Which then brings us to new business. A stop sign request at Arizona and West 18th.
Okay, yeah, this is a request I had gotten through C-Click Fix, so, as I generally do, I looked into it, and, I did get back to the person and asked them to attend if they could. Are either you guys here for that one, or no? Okay. So the intersection, they were saying there was a little bit of a visual obstruction for the yield sign and some near misses, but, for a yield sign, generally the warrants we look at first the traffic volume, which obviously is the side streets, it doesn't have high traffic volume. Secondly, then we look to see if there are any sight distance issues, which I did drive down there back and forth a few times. There really aren't any. I probably will ask our forestry department to look at these trees and see if they could trim them a little bit, or have the property owner trim them, just to get a little clearer view of the yield sign. And then the third thing we look at is the crash history. And in the last 5 years, there were 2 crashes at the intersection which involved people failing to yield. So that isn't generally a concerning or high volume of crashes for the intersection. However, it is something noteworthy. So what I would recommend at this time, I did tell them, to attend the meeting if they would like to further their request, which I did not get any response to, so I assume they're not wanting to further it, but I did tell them we would look at trimming the trees on the approach, and that I will put it on my radar to continually review that intersection and see if there's anything else that comes up where it's noteworthy. So at this time, I'm just recommending we continue to evaluate it and not take an action at this time.
So the philosophy on intersections with low volume is the preference is yield signs over stop signs because it improves traffic flow.
That's part of it. I mean, generally you go from, kind of in the hierarchy, you would go from an uncontrolled intersection to a yield-controlled intersection to a stop-controlled intersection to then, obviously, then a traffic signal.
Right. So as not to be remiss, I need someone to move and second the item.
Okay, I'll move it.
Second.
All right. Couple of questions. Jim, what's the downside of a stop sign in this location other than the labor to switch them out?
Yeah, well, the downside to stop signs, if they're not warranted, is that there is an increased likelihood that people will disobey the stop sign, and then that theoretically then causes them to lessen the compliance with stop signs, not only here, but in other areas. Because if we start putting up unwarranted stop signs, then people think they're less important because they start thinking, well, why should I stop here? There's no traffic. And that can lead to other safety issues.
Well, and again, realize I'm playing devil's advocate here, but they've already decided for themselves, at least two people, that the yield sign's unwarranted.
Right.
So, and again, not to put her on the spot, but I'm going to ask for a nugget of information from the officer that's sitting in the back of the room, if she's able to answer a quick question. What's the difference in fine for failure to yield and failure to stop?
It's probably the same.
Okay. I'm inclined to err on the side of caution and vote in favor of a stop sign at this location. In the very least, I would hope that if this should not be implemented, that we can get flags on the yield signs just to assuage some of the concerns.
Yeah, we definitely could do that.
But anyone else want to comment?
I agree with the flags. I don't think if it's 2 and 5 years, I mean, 2's unfortunate, obviously, but to change it because of 2 and how many numerous intersection crossings people use that daily, is a stop sign really worth it? Like you were saying, putting up a stop could make it realistically worse off, meaning less paying attention to it, not caring as much. So flags, I like that.
Al, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with flags.
I don't support a stop sign at this point.
Well, then I'm going to actually formally amend new business 1 that flags be added to that intersection regardless of whether there's a stop sign or a yield sign. And for that to happen, I need a second.
Second. Then we're just voting on the amendment.
We're going to vote on the amendment, and then we're going to vote on the issue as a
Yeah.
whole. I'm just trying to
Yeah,
protect
okay, yeah.
the flag issue in this endeavor. Any discussion on the amended or the amendment? All right, call the roll on the amendment, please.
Kaczynski.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye. So now we sit before us with essentially the same item with the addition of flags regardless of whether it's a stop sign or a yield sign. Anyone have any further discussion? All right, please call the roll on the amended resolution.
Kaczynski.
No.
Hanson.
Aye.
Hartman.
No.
Becker.
Aye. So we have a
You know, I
fail.
means that.
Yeah, you just voted for a
support
stop
the
sign, Courtney.
Oh, my bad. Thought we were supporting, yes, the flags. I
That was
think
the
it's
amendment.
important to know.
All right, so let's recall the roll just for the record.
Kaczynski.
Aye. Or no.
Hanson.
No.
Hartman.
No.
Becker.
Aye. Glad we cleared that up.
First time for everything.
All right, which brings us to Agenda 2, a request for a lane reconfiguration, AKA road diet, on South Main between South Park Ave and Waukau Ave. The current condition in that area being a 4-lane road.
Okay, I know Courtney, Mr. Szynski, and Becker were at the workshop that we had on this. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to have a number of meetings, so the consultant can't make all the meetings. But I will kind of reiterate for the benefit of anybody who hasn't seen this, the presentation that was put together for that workshop. And the history of this item is residents that live in that South Fond du Lac area, especially some of the residential areas off South Fond du Lac Avenue, have called numerous residents over the last few years with concerns for traffic calming, concerns with vehicle speed through that area, B, with the lack of pedestrian and/or bicycle accommodations, and having a hard time to get to the lakefront or to get to anywhere that they want to go, basically north of where they currently reside. So we commissioned a study with the support of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee on what could potentially be done in that area. As people may have known that, or you probably observed throughout the years, that we have done this in other areas. Murdoch was the first. It's a road reconfiguration, basically going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. So it's also known as a road diet. We did that on Murdoch Avenue. Most recently was on Jackson, and prior to that, on 9th. We did a mini version of a road diet on South Main Street last summer, but that was for a different reason. That was to accommodate the Sawdust District and potential parking. So this would be a further restriping of the road from South Park to Waukau. So I'll just briefly go through the presentation that consultants put together, just to anybody who didn't make it to that meeting or didn't see it. I can do that. So KL Engineering did this. We commissioned them. They did this study over the past year. I will skip through some of these slides just because they're not relevant. But like I said, we reached out to KL Engineering, traffic engineering firm, for a traffic operation and safety report. They collected some data. They did their report, submitted it to us. On July 21st, we had the workshop with the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and Traffic and Parking Advisory Board. They're still in the process of finalizing the report. And then since this is state connecting highway, they'll have to get support from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, which they've initially signaled support for, but they'll have to review this as well. And the proposal, it would be to restripe the roadway. There would be no physical alterations and or construction going on, so no cost to property owners or anything like that. This would be a city project. It wouldn't, and what I mean by that, there'd be no assessments or anything like that. Project background, like I said, they did the report. Basically what we're looking at is a road reconfiguration from Waukau to South Park. They collected data, did the existing analysis, came up with the typical section for road diet, and then analyzed the proposed improvements and confirmed that it would flow nicely or continue with the South Main Street upgrades that were done north last year. So the meeting at that time, we reviewed the road diet options, gave opportunity for the Bike and Pedestrian Committee and Traffic and Parking to get input and answer questions. Basically, this is what we're looking at for a typical section would be a bike lane, 1 lane of travel in each direction, and then a shared left turn lane. The existing corridor is a little less than 2 miles of 4-lane undivided road. There is not on-street parking. There are no left turn lanes except for at South Park Avenue. There are 90+ access points, the public streets and private driveways. They did study the railroad crossing near 24th, and it is mostly residential and commercial surrounding the corridor. So this is currently the 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. So the consultants did a traffic analysis of AM and peak periods, and they looked at 2022, this past year when they did it, and then they did a design year of 2043. Typically how these work is they look out 20 years and analyze the operation today versus how it would be in 20 years for traffic volume and things of that nature. They did study the intersections of Fond du Lac Road and US 45 and West Waukau, South Main and 24th, and South Main and South Park. It's a little hard to see here, but the average daily traffic is about, I believe it was like 6,900 up here, and it's about 8,000 vehicles here. For comparison, Jackson Street at its peak is about 14,000 vehicles, Murdoch's around 10, Ninth is just under 10 for some areas that we've done recent projects like this. The existing crash analysis, they found 58 crashes from 2016 to 2020. 39% were angled at intersections. I have this in a PDF. They had a PowerPoint where it shows this is probably one of the most common types of crashes we see at intersections. It's generally left-turning vehicles that collide with cars that are in this inside or curb lane. Often there will be a vehicle going straight here that blocks their view and causes crashes. So 39% of those crashes were angles, and then 24% were rear ends, which that's self-explanatory here. The car stops and someone rear ends them. 37% had injuries. They did identify that the intersection of South Main and 24th has a crash rate of greater than 1 per million vehicle miles, which generally in a traffic engineering sense, that signals there's a problem, that there's a safety issue that could be corrected. They found that currently the road is operating well under the capacity limits. It's operating a level of service of A in 22, and also in their projected year 2043, it would stay the same, which basically level service at A means free-flowing traffic. So if you think about like from a grading perspective, A is free-flowing, no problems, and an F is gridlock. All the side streets are operating at level C or better, the same this year as it would be in 2043. And there are no separate left turn lanes currently for access points, and there's poor lane utilization. This is just a picture of what it currently looks like. So the objectives we laid out for this was to maintain increased efficiency of movement through the corridor, increase the efficiency of movement on the side roads, increase the safety of South Main and the side streets, maintain access to businesses and private driveways, increase the multimodal facilities for better connectivity through the city, and improve South Main through restriping efforts. And what the consultants recommended was a road diet to increase safety, bicycle accommodations along South Main Street, so bike lanes, left turn accommodations, and to maintain access to public and private streets and driveways. The two-way left turn lane basically would reduce traffic, or the road diet would reduce traffic from 2 to 1 lane in each direction, so 1 through lane in each direction, and provide what they call a twiddle or a two-way left turn lane, a shared left turn lane in the middle. It reduces the number of conflict points, and they would also recommend exclusive left turn lanes at 24th Avenue. The nice thing about having a shared left turn lane is it gets those turning vehicles out of the travel lane. So that does help travel in the one lane going in each direction stay continuously flowing, as you will not have as many conflicts with the left turning vehicles in the middle. So like I mentioned earlier, it would look something like this. It'd be a little bit different than Murdoch and Jackson, as we would have a bike lane, which we currently don't have on the other roads due to the traffic volume and where they fit into the city's bike and pedestrian plan. But you're looking at probably typical would be a 14-foot shared left turn lane, a 11 to 12-foot through lane, and then a 5 to 6-foot bike lane. A little bit of this is redundant, but like I said, we remove left turns from traffic, which removes also what they call the multi-lane threat for pedestrians. Basically now you'd only have to cross one lane of through traffic in each direction, and you have a little bit of refuge in the middle if there's no cars turning left. It allows for the bike accommodations. Like we said earlier, the operations are expected to remain similar to existing, and the side streets minimally impacted by the reduction in lanes. What KL Engineering did is they performed a predictive crash modeling analysis, and the results indicated that overall crashes are expected to be decreased by 16% by restriping the road. And there would also be other safety benefits, like I mentioned earlier, removing the left turn lanes from through lanes, easier through and terminating movements from side roads, dedicated space for bikes, and reduced lanes for pedestrian crossing. So their conclusion or their recommendation was to restripe South Main Street into 3-lane roadway with a 2-way left turn lane, add on street bicycle lanes, and provide exclusive left turn lanes at 24th Avenue. And that's kind of the gist of the presentation. As far as what we're looking at for timelines, we're discussing this at this meeting this evening. The Bike and Pedestrian Committee will be discussing this at next Thursday at their August 18th meeting. And then we will get the item to council for their direction and recommendations. Like Mr. Becker mentioned earlier, right now it's scheduled August 23rd for a first reading and then September 13th for action. I do need to coordinate a little bit with the city manager and see if he thinks a workshop or anything's needed like that for council. But the first thing is to get this recommendations from committees to the council. So that's kind of the gist of it.
Someone willing to move the item?
Move it.
All right, I will then open it for public comment before we discuss it as a board. So I would invite whoever wants to go first to please step to the podium, give name and address for the record.
Hi, my name's Steve Davis, and I was the owner of Artie and Ed's for a little over 40 years, and I work for the company that bought Artie and Ed's Drive-In and owns some other properties in Oshkosh. And so when I became aware of this, I looked at it, and, you know, with watching that corner for 40 years, I mean, there definitely have been accidents and some issues that, you know, the traffic situation isn't the best. And when I first kind of looked at the plan, I guess before I looked at it close, I thought, oh, if they put in that left turn lane, that would be a good thing, you know, kind of help separate it. When I looked, you know, and read further and saw that you were going to really cut the lanes down to just 2 traffic lanes instead of 4, the main concern that came to mind was whether the situation with the trains that go through there had been thought of or discussed, you know, by the engineers. Something that we've seen, the train traffic, you know, over those 40 years increased dramatically from what it was. And they're going through there many times an hour, and sometimes they are, you know, quite long, and depending on traffic and things, sometimes they go through slower than what they ideally want to do. And something that we've noticed at the time of either real long trains or if they're going through slowly, oftentimes the traffic on South Main, you know, heading south, will back up both lanes full all the way to the drive-in. And I've seen it, you know, all the way even through the intersection, kind of on rare occasion. And when I thought of that, I guess what kind of came to mind for me is, you know, what's going to happen when you only have 2 lanes to accommodate what now, you know, 2 full lanes of cars go in. And that was kind of a concern I could see, you know, the traffic, I mean, being backed up past the 24th Avenue, you know, on Main Street, and that would also kind of stop like it does occasionally now. I mean, if there's cars backed up to 24th, then the next thing 24th Avenue is backing up, and then as far as the business property goes, I mean, that kind of, for that period of time, shuts it off, and then you get situations where, you know, either the traffic on the road doesn't want to let the customers out, or the customers try to get, you know, out without, you know, waiting like they maybe should, and those create some safety issues. So that was kind of a concern. And the other, I guess, thought is, you know, if you're to go to just 1 lane on South Main on that side and increase the amount of traffic in that 1 lane, what the accessibility, or, you know, we've tried to over the years, and it went way back to when that first, you know, when the road was redone in 1995 or so, to, you know, get the traffic flowing through there kind of from the north through and then exiting on the west and east sides of the property. And, right now it's probably about a 50-50 when people do leave, whether they go on to Doty or go on to Main Street. And I could see that Main Street being an issue, and if all of a sudden all that traffic, if it kind of gets where people don't go that way because it's hard, and they all start going the other way, we run into kind of an issue with the staff that's taking care of the picnic area back there, and just traffic in general, I think could be, kind of not a great scenario if everybody had to go out on Doty Street. So those are kind of my concerns, but, I think everybody would welcome something that would make it safer. I just don't know I think cutting down to just 2 lanes might be trying to put a little too much into a small spot, right in that area, so. I guess that's my comments.
When did they cut off? Doty used to go through, and then there was a gas station just south of the restaurant?
Yeah, that was taken out when they redid that major road thing in like 1995. And so it put all the traffic, and that helped. That sure wasn't a safe intersection, that point down there by any means, but, but there is, that intersection safety is a issue, and definitely the speed is a issue out there. There's no way around it, so. So I guess if you could, if that's been thought of and everything, fine. I guess if not, I would encourage them to look into the effects that traffic backing up from the trains could have in that area.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Davis?
Okay,
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen? All right, which then brings it back to the 4 of us for discussion purposes. Anyone?
I can tell you, I know, with the railroad crowd, they did evaluate that as part of their evaluation. And you'll be happy to know that one of the, a concern for some of those residents is getting to Artie and Ed's if they want to bike or walk there, so they'll be happy to hear that. But that was one of the things that was mentioned, that they were trying to get there and they, wanted to walk or bike, and they felt they didn't have a safe way to do that because there aren't sidewalks in part of that South Main area. So they did, and they did study that intersection, and and I'm hearing that intersection and speed are issues. So I guess I would side with, the traffic engineers are saying that this is what's going to help to remedy that situation.
Jim, you've done 3 of these now, or 4, you said. What's been the experience on Murdoch and Jackson and Ninth? How has that improved things?
Yes. So on Murdoch, that was the first one we did. We got initially a lot of concerns from business owners and from others because it was somewhat new. However, we did have a high crash intersection. That one in particular was Elmwood, Vinland, and Murdoch, and Wisconsin and Murdoch. And the crash rates on both those intersections went down drastically, especially Wisconsin and Murdoch. That used to be a high crash intersection every year, and now it's not even on the radar. So it did improve that. I did hear from one business owner that was initially opposed to it. About a year after we did it, he called and apologized and said that he said, I'm sorry. He said, it works much better than I thought it would. 9th Avenue, we have had no concerns. Actually, we get a lot of praise for that one because that one was, it was a little different in that it wasn't straight 4 lanes and people were driving it as 4 lanes. So that one, actually, I've not gotten any complaints on. I've gotten mostly praise on. And Jackson, that one I was a little more nervous about it to start because the traffic volume is so much higher, but it's been working really well, honestly. We don't have quite a full year last when I did the crash analysis, but they were being reduced, or they were reduced last time I looked at it. So that is going well as well. So.
Thank you.
Questions. Do we have an average on how many cars get backed up when the train comes through?
I don't have that specifically, but they did put that in their analysis, and so in their report, in the, appendix, they do have, what they do is a traffic modeling, so they put all the data and everything into a computer model, and it tells them what the average queues and levels of service and delays are. So they did analyze that.
So where would, if that did get analyzed, I don't know if I should reach out too, but, how far does it push traffic back to? So if he says with 2 lanes, it already goes back past RD Nuts once in a while, it would double it. How far, like?
I would
how far
have to
would-
ask.
Okay.
I don't know.
If
off
you
the top of
wouldn't
my head.
mind, if you have been
Sure.
talking to them, I'd appreciate that.
Yep, I can find out.
Because if we're, he said again, the 1 lane pushing that much traffic that far back. I like the road diet idea a lot, but that is a major concern. How many people are gonna be lined up? And then what would that do to neighbors and everything else trying to get out? Cause then that just blocks everyone up.
It would do it in the south, the south side of the tracks as well.
Yep.
I mean, so you
Oh,
probably have
yeah.
a scenario there where it would be down like to Parnell's.
Exactly, and people don't stop for driveways or like let space, people don't stop for intersections on Main Street right now. Not the 9th intersection, but what's that, 7th? Between like South Main or just behind the bridge, whenever the bridge goes up, people stop right in the middle of the intersection, cause they're thinking, how close can I get before that bridge
Oh,
comes down that I
6th,
can cross, that it's
right.
and even at the, like, they don't care about the, lights even. They'll just stop in the middle of the intersection because Jackson's out,
Right. Yeah.
so. That's the only thing about 1 lanes that I have a problem with right now, but otherwise I like it.
If this does move forward, Mr. Collins, it's tentatively scheduled to be done in spring.
It wouldn't be until next year, but we would have to, right now, it is a budget item, for if the council adopts it is one of the recommended items in the budget, so, that would be, assuming that, favorable recommendations, council recommends it, then we'd get through the budget process, they would have to budget, approve the funding for it, and then we would bid it out with next year's construction, so it would be somewhere between May and probably then August.
Well, and the reason I ask is to Courtney's point, I think that's a critical bit of information that needs to be had by both us, Bike and Ped potentially, and certainly council before they move forward on anything. So, I mean, I would advocate that, at the very least, this hits the table, as it were, until that information is had. Because, I mean, God forbid, the big red truck rolls off CP and has to go south on Main Street, and there's a train, but the train is, I mean, the scene is just north of the tracks. They're not gonna get there easily, is my point, because that queue is gonna be, I would argue, probably, at least on the north side, probably up to Fugelberg Park, or damn close, pardon my French.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yep, and me too.
That's so far back up.
And again, to Courtney's point, and I've witnessed it many times, she's absolutely right. People block intersections galore when they think it's in their best interest, regardless of anything or anyone else. So for a fire truck or an ambulance to get to Fugelberg Park, they're gonna have to go a long way out of their way and weave through arguably not the shortest route between 2 points to get there. So,
Yeah, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, obviously, because this isn't gonna be done till next year, timing isn't as of a concern. So, I could I could ask the consultant for that answer and then bring that back, and or, I can always have them, I don't know if I wanna pay them to come to, cause I know they're probably gonna have to come to at least one more meeting, but we can maybe do something virtually. The other thing, as far as public comment goes, I just wanted to note, we did get a call today. He didn't get a chance to attend the meeting or send the email, but very supportive, same thing as the other residents you heard at the neighborhood workshop that was concerned about, the speeds and walking and biking in the area. So, we did get one more positive feedback, and then I got one email with just some questions about it that I answered. Other than that, you know, we had the public comments from the neighborhood association, or not association, but the neighbors that were at the last meeting. So, like any of these projects, there are some concerns, but there's also a lot of support, so, but, you know, if the board feels that important, that is, you know, we get an answer for that question, I don't have any problem with that.
Well, and to that same point, if you're talking to them, please get some clarification from them, because they contend level of service is gonna be A at all the side streets. Well, I would argue level of service at 24th is not gonna be
Oh,
A.
no, the side streets, they said level of service C or better.
Okay, well, I would still argue it's probably not C at 24th Avenue at certain times of day. A, when there's a train, and B, when you're trying to get out of the RD and Ed's parking lot. That's true. I hadn't thought about that, but
Yeah. What they're looking at is they're looking at the level of service throughout the day. They do look at it at peak hour as well, but obviously, you know, for those 15 minutes when truck gets out, it's gonna be, obviously there's gonna be more traffic. That's the same thing. All the roads are heavy, you know? I know that Hughes and Oregon, for instance.
true,
are-
but you can't, you can plan for the whistle at Oshkosh Truck. You can't plan for the train, what time it comes through. They come through it all, it's sporadic. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen.
It could happen every 2 hours.
Yeah, so therein lies yet another
They
concern.
do have, the trains that do have a schedule when they're, you know, but I don't know, how accurate that is, but they do have a schedule.
Yeah,
for
I
when
was
they
gonna
come.
say, I've heard from Canadian National, yeah, on a couple of occasions in a prior lifetime that they go when they can go. Depends on how quickly they cut them loose from the train yard in Chicago. So, again, I would ask that, you know, some rationale be provided for that, specifically the intersection at 24th in South Main. Anyone else have a comment? Because I'm gonna,
I think getting more information about trains is useful, but, you know, my personal view is that if we're gonna not do something because of something that happens, you know, sporadically, that the rest of the time improves the situation, particularly for people walking and biking in that area. It's hard for me to not support something that will improve things even with sporadic interruptions. So I'm interested in the data, but
we do traffic surveys, Mr. Collins. Can we do a train survey and see how many trains come through there in a day?
Yeah, I'll talk to KL. I guess I can't say 100% what they did, but I know that they did take that into account. So I'll have to talk to them and see what they've actually already done.
And again, just on a different, although somewhat related topic, what's before us today is actually the same that was presented to us a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
So in that spirit, and again, I realize that Al didn't have the opportunity to join us, but the rest of us were actually there, correct? Yeah. I brought forth some concerns about the bike lanes going across those tracks. No modification for that purpose?
Well, that was more, I think we talked about that, and then a couple other concerns. This right now is just a concept. It's not a engineered design ready to go. So they were saying there was things we could do when we get to the design that would mitigate those factors, but we're not to that point yet. Once we approve the concept, then they'll get into actually designing it. So that's pretty much what they were saying at that time, is that we can take into consideration when we get to the implementation to seeing how we can mitigate that.
And again, I appreciate that, but by the same token, they should have a pretty good idea right off the top of their head if they spend 8 hours a day working through these issues for other municipalities around the Midwest or whatever their market area happens
Yeah.
to be.
So I definitely, I can ask them about that as well.
Okay. Dan, you have any?
Not really. I guess if it doesn't work out, you can always, it's easy enough to go back to the set up as it is now.
Yes.
You know what I
it-
mean?
it-
Because like it said, there's no added construction, just
Right.
striping the lanes.
Yep, that's correct. It is difficult to remove street paint because it's designed to last so long, but however, it is possible as we've done. I mean, we've gotten, not only us, but the industry's gotten better at it. You know, when I first started here, the first one we did, the only way to really effectively remove street paint was to scarify, which means you basically scrape the layer off. And that's still heavily used. You can tell, just if you know, like if you drive down 41, for example, as well, when they redid, you can see the old, if you're looking, you can see the old lane lines. Now, when we did Jackson Street, we had them use water blasting, and it looks a lot better. You still can see some remnants, but I do think that it looks a lot better than when we used scarifying. So it cost more, but it's worth it in the end. So I think that's gradually improving. But you're correct that it's just paint. I mean, so it's not like you got to reconstruct the road or anything like that.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of projects reversed over the course of time. Like I remember one, I used to live on Bowen, and they made Bowen and was that Mill, I think, the one that kind of angles off there. They made those all like one-way streets and kind of circled around. That didn't last too long before they went back to the current.
All right, that being said, I'm going to move that this be put on the table until such time as Mr. Collins can return to us with the information we've requested. I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Please call the roll on the move to table or the motion to table.
Krasinski,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Bartlett,
Aye.
Beck.
Aye. The motion sits on the table until such time as Mr. Collins returns with that information.
If you, did you get their name and, or did you get Steve's name and address? I know you have his name, but do you have his address?
I'm sure it's on my mail.
Okay. So if you want to just let her, she can just verify with you, but then we can send you the notice when we have the next meeting. Because, you know, we sent like, I don't know how many hundreds of notices.
240.
So probably won't re-notice everyone, but anybody that's interested, we certainly can send another notice.
All right, which then brings us to staff statements. Mr. Collins, back to you.
The only thing I have is the bridge obviously is still up, and that one sounds like it's going to be delayed a little further by the state. So whenever they get the required gears, I know I still get questions about that from even the, I think Mr. Christensen sent me a question about it, which he was going to ask. I guess I could answer that. He was going to ask at the meeting why one side's up and the other side's down.
Boat traffic.
Well, it's for boat traffic to get through, but he was more concerned with the boats all going through one side. The reason is because the gears that are malfunctioning are on the side that's down. So when they get the gears and they need to work on it, obviously it has to be in down position. So that's why that side is down, A, and B, those are the malfunctioning gears. So obviously you don't want to leave that up in the air and then take the chance that it's going to come down. So anyway.
And this might be a little bit outside your purview, Jim, but when does the requirement under state law for us to lift the bridge, or bridges, cease in terms of the season?
I don't know. I know there's, yeah, you're right, though, there is a season.
Right.
I always thought it was the end of September.
I
But
think it's something like that.
Okay, because obviously, is it?
Mid-October.
Okay, no. Take heart, citizens. You'll be able to get around a little easier in mid-October.
They're literally gonna fix it, and it's not even gonna be needed anymore, for the season at least. Great.
So it's, yeah, unfortunately, it's something that we have to live with.
Yep. And the only other thing I got to mention is while we're talking about that bridge, there's still, the council has supported a fixed bridge. However, now they're working with, the engineers are working with the state on the exact alignment to see exactly where it's going to be aligned and how that's going to work, but it will be a fixed bridge.
On a second note, can I bring up a topic I'd like to possibly put on?
Sure.
Speaking of traffic and backing everything up, when the Main Street Bridge goes up because Jackson is closed, Main Street gets full of cars, 2 lanes long, past CP, sometimes even past Wagoo on the north side. And
Yeah.
I don't know how much for the south side, but that's 2 lanes as well.
Mhm.
That backs up quite a bit as well. Now, I understand shimmying it down and having the left lane turn into 7th Street for the sawmill district. But is there any way we could change light patterns or decrease time on 6th Street to get Main Street open longer to get cars through? Because if you go past on Saturday or Friday night or busy times of the day, you are stuck in that I go from 11th Street over the bridge at least 6 times a week, like busy time of the day. I am probably stuck there for a good 20 minutes. There are cars, they can't move through, because once you get over the bridge, it's only turn right, and you have one straight lane. And then when you're coming the opposite way, it's the same thing with that. It goes down to 1 lane because of the left-hand turn,
Yep.
and people just sit there.
You're talking about the light at 6th and Main?
Yeah, 6th and Main, 9th and Main, mainly those. And then when the bridge goes up, it's just even worse because then we're going to pile on top of that. And I know it's mostly in part because Jackson's not open, but if we could look into the timing of those to add and increase time, at least during busy hours, that would be really helpful because I've got a lot of people yelling at me for how long they get to sit at those lights now, and
But
I've
the
experienced.
the good news is we do have a long-term solution, and we are looking at putting the grid smart cameras at the intersection, which will solve that problem. However, until we get that, right now, Main Street is coordinated, so the traffic signals up and down Main Street are coordinated so that you hit greens
Yeah.
or reds in succession. So, but I will talk to our traffic signal person and see if that's possible. Generally, we try not to make too many changes for temporary situations.
Yeah.
But seeing how as we are going to be changing that anyway, maybe we'll see.
I know it's
Take a look at it.
compounded with Jackson right now, but even, I don't really know how it was before that, because it really wasn't the busiest
Yep.
season before that kind of hit, but it's a lot of people trying to get into the same lane on both sides
Right.
right now, and people start moving over to the right lane before they even hit, Main Street past, what is that high that comes downtown? So the second they get by the US Bank building, going south on Main
Yep.
Street before the bridge, people are already moved, that everyone gets into the right lane to go straight.
Right.
They take that long to get over, and then everyone else gets cut off, because they know it's a left lane up there.
Yep.
Not that that's not a good thing, but it's just that, like, stop there when a bridge is up, the left lane is empty. The right
Yeah.
lane is completely full, backed up forever.
Right.
So it's just something we could look into. I don't really know, but
Yeah, I'll check into that. We also have had some issues with when you go over the bridge and then we have like you said, so you're going south, you have the one straight and then you have the left turn lane, where it kind of transitions. We did add an overhead sign, however, the arm isn't long enough to get over the lane, so we're seeing if we can get one that'll go, put the lane signs overhead, because I know,
everyone's pretty much got that handled. It's just how much they have to wait then for the 9th Street.
right,
I mean, I've never seen any issues with people, like they know they gotta get over, but they have
Yep.
nowhere to get over into because it's already packed.
right,
Or they've been over for however long, that they're sitting in a giant long lane of cars that it takes 3 lights to get through.
yep, we can look into that.
Cool, thanks.
Anyone else with a future agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to,
request?
I mentioned a few meetings ago on 11th and Georgia. It's kind of the handicapped ramp is jogged over, it's not at the corner like it normally is. And the people are constantly blocking that handicapped ramp. So I'd like to put in a request for no parking here to corner from, whatever number of feet you come up with.
At which corner is it?
It's
11th and South Park?
11th
Or
and
Georgia?
Georgia. It's the north side of 11th and east side of Georgia.
Okay.
And my next door neighbor drives one of those electric wheelchairs, and he said, it's you know, he goes through there more than I do, and says it's a big problem. And, you know, there's other people in the area that use that. And, if you're driving, you gotta sneak out further in cause you got a car right there where normally would be, you know,
Right,
at least
Yeah.
another parking space further back.
okay.
And, you know, I was just, within the last few days I drove through and it was like that again too, you know. For the most part, you know, you can park across the street on 11th. There's nothing there except the old ball diamond. That there's no reason. It's not like it's a high parking area, you know, except, you know, if there was an event or something. But like I say, you know, it's continuing going on. People blocking that handicapped ramp. And it's like I said, it's an odd ramp because most of them are for both directions at the corner. But this one, you know, you got one ramp for this direction, one ramp for this direction. You know, like it's kind of a safety issue.
Yeah, I can look at it. Well, it'd basically be a parking issue, but, I mean, you're not supposed to park within 15 feet of
Yeah,
a
you're not-
crossing anyway, but.
I'm not asking for like an ordinance, but people aren't obeying how the laws are supposed to be, you know.
We
And
could,
it's a safety, like I say, you know, you're blocking off the handicapped ramp and there's people that ride those wheelchairs. And
Yeah.
for the, you know, automobile traffic as well, you know.
yeah, we'll look and see if we maybe need to extend the no parking.
Well, you don't need to extend it, just put it where it should be, you know, like,
Yep.
you know, you're not supposed to be blocking those things, those ramps.
We don't like to paint curbs, but I could look, maybe
Yeah.
that's a possibility too.
You know, I think just a sign would probably be sufficient, you know.
Yeah, are you advocating for a no parking here to corner
Yes.
type of situation?
Because like I said, it's all areas that shouldn't be parked in
Oh,
anyway.
yeah,
It's not
I
like
agree
I'm
with that.
saying add a no parking zone. I mean, it should be a no parking zone already, you know.
Right. Okay, yeah, I can look at that.
It's like, there was another issue a few years ago where I asked for no parking, where people were parking too close to the fire hydrant, and you put in the no parking sign, and it just worked wonders, you know. Otherwise, you know, you couldn't see, and when people are having a picnic at one of those shelters, you know, it gets all parked up.
Right.
And like I said, there's really not a lot of park traffic here unless there is like a big event, because, you know, the whole other side of the street is open, you know.
Okay.
I don't know what prompts people to park blocking the handicapped ramp, you know. But like I said, I happen to know that there are people in the area that use those wheelchairs, so.
Al, do you have any future agenda requests? No. Nor do I, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Second.
Please call roll for adjournment.
Shazinski?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.